podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to How We're the Podcast from Roker Report. And if you follow Bombers' weekly update on all the transfer rumours on the Roker Report website, you will have seen that silly season is well underway. So we thought we'd grab a guest who knows his stuff so we can take stock of what we've just achieved in terms of returning to the Premier League and what might be ahead for us this summer. But first, we need our dose of positivity that this person always brings to the table. It is, of course, Gavin Henderson. All right, Gav?
Yes, very good, mate. I thought I was getting the big build up there for being the specialist.
No, because you see, you noticed because I was talking about someone who knows his onions, and then I have to do you first, you see.
Well, I'll faint praise. I guess there was something in there somewhere, sort of an expert. No, I'm definitely no expert.
But it's weird, isn't it, with the summer that, you know, especially with what happened, Gav, that actually the summer just seems to fly, and like you can't stop talking about what happened, and then you go, oh, bloody hell, actually, kind of fixtures around the corner, and the summer's just flying through.
It's where's the time going? I don't know if it's because we've just kept ourselves really busy by doing podcasts every day, or what. But we aren't too far off pre-season starting, which is mad, isn't it? I mean, even still on top, like this is a mini rant of sorts, I guess. But the football season hasn't actually ended, has it? Because the European Championships are on for the under-21s and under-19s. You've got the Club World Cup, which has just started. I mean, it hasn't ended for a lot of clubs. And yeah, we're round the corner from a bunch of pre-season fixtures. It's just crazy.
Yeah, having followed the lads for 40 years, I do know that it just never ends. I do know that, Gav. But as I said, of course, we're not going to do this alone because we need someone who actually knows his stuff. So to help us take stock and speculate on where we are headed, we are very pleased to welcome Sky Sports' very own Sunderland fanatic. It is, of course, Tom White. Hello, Tom.
I was expecting a third guest to come there with that intro, but thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's great to be here. I'm really enjoying this, the new style of the podcast that you've got and all the daily releases. Don't think I've missed a single minute of it, so well done to you.
Oh, well, I hope, well, actually, we're just reeling from the top 10s that we've been putting out recently, so we're getting a lot of feedback disagreeing with us mainly on those.
Your man who you had on a couple of times, Murta, is it?
Yeah.
Well, I back my football knowledge against anyone, but he is in a different level. I mean, going back to when he was talking about kind of, you know, the early 90s with Sunderland, and then when Peter Reid came in a few years later, he knew things that I was like, wow. So he's a different level. I thought he was brilliant.
Yeah, nosy stuff, and was there with the greats like Weatherall and Story and all them. But Tom, I mean, in terms of the modern day, I mean, it's ridiculous when you think about it. I was actually surprised when I look back, but it's been 9 years since Sunderland have been going through a summer where we're looking ahead to a season in the Premier League. Has it sunk in yet?
I'm going to say no, not quite, because I'm still watching the reruns, the highlights from Wembley, and I'm even watching the highlights from the Stadium Light game as well, the second leg, because I got to Coventry and I got to Wembley. I didn't get the Stadium Light for the Dan Ballard header, and I'm still watching that back. So has it sunk in? No, but I think it's starting to, with the fixtures coming out, which I'll be on air for that. I know by the time this comes out, we might actually know the fixtures, so it might date it slightly, but that kind of hits home because that's when you start writing in your diary. Right. First of all, Newcastle at home, Newcastle away, and then you start planning all your away days, seeing which games are midweek, seeing which games are box. I'm hoping we're at home on Boxing Day because I'm actually in the Northeast this year. And then that is you officially starting to plan for next season rather than look back on last. And it is still exciting, but I haven't quite had it sink in just yet. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, I know Gav hasn't stopped talking about those games yet, have you, Gav? You still, I'm not sure, Gav, where you are at the minute. Are you still on last season, or are you actually moving towards next season?
No, I think I'm ready to move on a bit now. I'm just sat waiting for some transfers. Obviously the fixtures dropping, which we're recording this before they come out. But yeah, I'm ready now to to look forward. I'm starting to actually take notice of what's going on at other clubs. Like, I think Brighton have signed a centre-half, and I'm like, that's interesting. Could that have a knock-on effect for us? Could there be some players coming up that we might be interested in? All these sort of things are now playing into your thinking, where in previous seasons, I don't even think I acknowledged what was going on in the Premier League because I didn't care. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm happy to be looking forward, though.
That's it. I think everyone just assumes when Brighton sign a player, he's going to be a worldie, isn't he? But just in terms of that gap in terms of time, Tom, having been in League One and the Championship for 6 years, League One for, actually 7, I suppose, if you include the Championship on the other side, but League One for 4 years. I'm not sure if it's just the fact of being away from the spotlight for so long, but having gone up again to the Premier League, just in these few weeks, it feels like a bigger skill to be in the top division than it was nearly a decade ago. I mean, would you say that gap in terms of exposure is getting bigger?
Exposure, definitely. I mean, I see that firsthand. It's with Sunderland now being in the Premier League, you will see just how big the difference is between the way the Premier League is treated by the big organisations like Sky Sports compared to the EFL. EFL gets brilliant coverage. I don't know last season I spent a lot of time watching Sky Sports Plus, which was mainly EFL, and it was the coverage was brilliant. But Sky Sports News, for instance, will always focus on the Premier League. The Premier League takes up so much airtime, and anyone who doesn't work in the industry or younger fans who maybe have got into football in the last 7 or 8 years are going to see just how much Sunderland are going to be talked about in the national and international media, as opposed to more of a kind of byline and some might say afterthought. I mean, it's never an afterthought, but some people could be forgiven for thinking that. And you'll also see a lot of people will realise, because my colleague and friend, a great guy, by the way, Keith Downey, who gets so much grief with Sunderland fans thinking he supports Newcastle, which he doesn't, by the way. He supports Hearts, but he's going to be outside. The last few years, he's been outside St James's Park all the time and very rarely outside the Stadium of Light. And his defence is a very fair defence. Yeah, but Sky send me to cover the Premier League more than the EFL. And for a long time, sadly, Sunderland have been out of the Premier League. You will now see him split 50-50. And I hope people notice that as well, because he gets a lot of grief. I see it firsthand. I seem to spend a lot of my time at away games defending Keith Downey, which I hope that can now stop, because he's a great guy. And by the way, when he reports something on Sunderland, it's very rarely wrong. His contact at Sunderland is just as good as they are at Newcastle. And when he puts out a transfer story, you can take that as fact.
Yeah. And again, and just on that exposure, Tom, we've talked to recently with the likes of Nick Barnes and Simon O'Rourke throughout the season, and they've been telling us that the club has been preparing behind the scenes just in case we got promoted in terms of media responsibilities. And that they've set up rooms and they were getting them to do practice interviews, after games, and building it up almost like a Premier League setup. I mean, is it a thing that clubs have to think about this? Because if they don't, then there's almost a shock factor for players when they end up in the Premier League.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, actually. Kind of glad and kind of sad. I think it's good that the club are so well prepared. And we've seen how well prepared they are for everything, because if you think the whole Till the End campaign, how that was set up, and then afterwards, me and my son have got a T-shirt with the TIFO on that says, Premier League, we are back until the end, it says on the back of the T-shirt. That's good preparation, because they wouldn't have seen the light of the day if we'd lost that final. Yeah. So the club are well prepared. That's a good thing that we support a club who are so ready for anything that comes at us. The bad thing is, I don't like all this media training. I think that the players should be treated as the human beings they are and should be trusted to say what they like. They should be trusted to have a personality. And I've been banging this drum for a long time. You don't really get very many personalities in football anymore because of the sort of media management. It's like, yes, talk, but say nothing. Don't give them anything. And it's like you're talking to a robot and you think, but I know you. I've met you. You are not like this. This isn't you. And I want those personalities to come out. Because if you look at some of the players that we've got some real characters. I hope they are allowed to continue to be a character.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it, Gav? What Tom's just said, we speak to a lot of players, but 90% of the time, I would say, it's players who have finished playing. But then you realise, actually, like Tom's just said, they are really good people. And actually, you end up having a completely different picture of them. But that's only because they've finished playing and they can say what they want to say.
Yeah, they live without fear of anything sort of affecting their career. I think that's the ultimate thing, isn't it? That they almost worry if they say the wrong thing, it could negatively impact on their careers. So I get it to a degree, but I think we've got some natural talkers in that squad. It's a shame Job's left, because Job was probably one of the best of it, and for such a young man was so mature. Every time he was in front of a camera, I didn't think I was getting somebody who was not being authentic. I always felt as though Job was being himself and speaking his mind. I think Dan Neil's a bit like that. I think Luke O'Nien certainly talks very naturally, as he would if he was around you in person, as he does in front of the cameras. But I think more so for young players, isn't it? It's difficult, because you know that, even not, sometimes you can say something which is completely innocent, and the tabloids and the local news might, because they're in search of a headline, might spin it a certain way or take it out of context. And then all of a sudden your name's all over social media, and people are screaming abuse on social media about something which was pretty innocuous, Yeah.
Well, we had Danny Graham on, I remember, who got dogs abuse at Sunderland. But when we spoke to him kind of after he'd finished, I think that the response we got from it was, what a great fella, and, what he was kind of, what was going on at the time, we didn't really know, and all this. And it's like, as you said, Tom, sometimes if players came out and said this while they were playing, it would almost help them sometimes.
But I'll tell you something about Danny Graham. We're going back a few years now. He just had he was a Sunderland player, but he just had a season out on loan, which I think might have been Hull. And he'd come back, and we were at Royal Ascot, and I was chatting to him after the races, and we'd both been, for want of a better term, bang on it. And he was a right good laugh, right? He was brilliant. And then I went, so what do you think will happen this summer? Do you think he'll go? And I think he instantly thought, oh no, and that was just a normal, we were just chatting normally, right? And I think he might have thought, oh, is he trying to get something out of me? And it was as though he instantly sobered up and goes, I'm just concentrating on getting fit and hoping to get back into the first team this summer. And I was like, oh, right, I see. That kind of thing does happen. And you talk about someone like that, and it's a slightly different topic. Is that when Danny Graham gets a bit of grief from Sunderland fans, he talks really highly of the club. Lee Clark absolutely loved it at Sunderland and says so. Sometimes people say something publicly and say something completely different privately. So this is going back to that media training. Lee Clark says publicly and privately how much he loved his time at Sunderland and respects the club. And another one, this will shock you. I'll be interested to see your faces, because obviously I can see your faces. I know that the listeners can't, but I can see your faces. Someone else who speaks really highly of Sunderland as a club, this is going to shock you, is Michael Chopra. And I know, so that I can see, look, the two of you are speechless. Michael Chopra publicly might have a bit of a go at Sunderland because he is such a Newcastle fan, but privately, he's completely the opposite. He says he loved his time at Sunderland and was hoping that Sunderland would get back up to the Premier League, and he's another one who speaks highly of us.
Yeah, well, he was a hero for that few minutes when we're celebrating that goal against Spurs. I think that's about all I can remember.
He was straight on Twitter after we got promoted, saying easy 6 points for Newcastle, wasn't he?
Yeah, I did hear that, but I'd like to think he was just joking and playing up to the Newcastle fans. But again, in private, speaks very highly of us.
Well, I mean, just to reflect a little bit on last season, Tom, because look, of course, the focus ends up being on an unbelievable finish in the playoffs, which I think is probably ridiculous. If Hollywood came up with that storyline, people would be saying it's ridiculous because of those huge moments. But do we have to actually take stock and remember what a huge achievement it was to end up finishing quite comfortably in fourth like we did in the end?
Yes, we do have to recognise that, because we were fourth for so long. And if you look at how things were at the start of the season, having come off, we finished something like 16th the season before, and it was a bit of a miserable season. To have finished 4th so comfortably, and the start of the season we had, it was amazing, to the point where we were actually quite disappointed to finish 4th and not challenge for the top 2 more. And that is, we do have to, the club needs to give itself the credit that it deserves for doing that. The playoffs, we didn't sneak into the playoffs, we were there comfortably. And if you look at throughout the whole season, we were very, very good. And I would say we were solid, would have been fine. We were more than solid.
Yeah. And Gav, I know, when we did the top 10 managers recently, you had Régis Le Bris up in second behind Peter Reid, I think it was. And, those moments were brilliant. And look, you obviously, you don't want to lose those, because they were just magical moments that everyone will always remember. But is there a fear that almost it takes it, like the focus slightly away from the achievement on the season as a whole?
I don't know. I'm not too sure about that. For me, I think the moments are what you remember in years to come. Like in 5-10 years, it'll be the semi-final, the final, blah blah blah. But I don't think it necessarily takes away from what we've achieved. It depends who's looking at it, doesn't it? If from like an obsessive Sunderland fan's perspective, I can appreciate the full season. But somebody looking in from the outside might think very, very differently about how we did. They might just. You're still seeing it now. I mean, there's been the last couple of days, hasn't it? Don Hutchinson's been getting a bit of grief because he made some comments about the performance in the semi-final. Said Coventry battered us, and then that's obviously got Sunderland fans' backs up, because they've come back round and said no, they didn't. They might dominate a possession, but they didn't batter us. They had 3 shots over 2 games with extra time involved. They didn't batter Sunderland. And I almost think there is this there's almost this undercurrent, and I'm interested to see how it plays out over the coming season. There's almost this undercurrent from people outside the Sunderland bubble that we almost didn't deserve necessarily to get through to the final, and didn't deserve to win the final. It's just this weird feeling I've got about some of the commentary around it. And I wonder how that kind of affects the perspective people have on us when we go into the Premier League. Is it going to be all about how Sunderland looked their way into the Premier League, or maybe weren't good enough? I mean, you're already seeing it in the odds, aren't you, for relegation? Clear favourites to get relegated. Whereas I don't know whether it's just me being a fairly positive Sunderland fan or whatever, but I'm quite hopeful about our chances. I think we've got better. I certainly feel like we've got better chance than the other 2 promoted teams, and that comes from just based on the way we played this season, the season gone. Sorry. I think that might translate quite well into Premier League football in terms of trying to survive. So no, I don't know. I think with Régis Le Bris, we've got the right manager to try and to navigate what's coming forward to us. I think when you look at some of the other teams, Leeds have lost a lot of really important players already, and there was all that uncertainty about whether the manager was going to get sacked after they got promoted. Burnley, I think Scott Parker's been linked with the Brentford job. So the other teams where we were promoted with, there's uncertainty there. With Sunderland, we seem pretty calm, don't we? So I think it all marries nicely. I think what we did last season has set us up lovely for what's to come.
Well, that's it, being calm. I think it's Régis Le Bris' trademark. We've talked about him quite a lot and mentioned him a couple of times already. But Tom, I mean, it's amazing when you think back. You already talked about last season, the 16th place and the kind of mess we were in and the mistakes we made of last season. But then in the summer, it's all a bit strange. We appoint this guy out of nowhere. Nobody's heard of him. He's from France. Everyone's a bit concerned. And then he virtually goes into the season with the same squad, bar, you talk Chris Mepham and Alan Brown comes in, bit of experience, then Wilson Isidore. But other than them, Alan Brown didn't play too much. So you've got Wilson Isidore and Chris Mepham, who really came in and played a lot of games in terms of new signings, especially at the start of the season. But again, the fact that he's come in as an unknown, and there was a lot of worry that if he didn't start the season, he was going to be under pressure very quickly. A lot of podcasts neutral podcasts for the Championship were talking about it. And the fact he came out, he got this squad organised and came out the blocks and kind of gave them that structure. I mean, it's just incredible the way he came in and did that so quickly.
Yes, it is. And I admit I was very pessimistic. I didn't, although I knew who he was because that's my job, but I couldn't have told you much about him at all. I wouldn't have known what his style of play was. I'd basically just heard his name and knew what he'd done for the last few seasons in France. And that really second season that he was in charge was quite miserable. Was quite miserable for him. So I wasn't very optimistic. I did wonder if something had gone wrong in the recruitment process, and I don't think it did. But if it did, then at least we got a bit of luck there, because you could tell even before the season started, when you if you heard any interviews with any of the players, they said how good he was on the training pitch. Now that doesn't make you into a good manager, but if he's good on the training pitch, and it did appear very, very early on in the season that he got a team spirit together, which would suggest he was a good manager. If you've got tactical knowledge and are able to translate that to the players, and you're a good manager, you're off to a good start. And actually, I think last summer's recruitment, although it wasn't like we brought in 15 players, it ended up being a very good transfer window last summer. And then you add Enzo Lefebvre in January. And all that, remember, though, that's good. But remember, we lost Jack Clark as well.
Yeah.
So he lost his best player in a team that finished 16th. So I think Le Bris, certainly from Sunderland fans, has certainly got the credit that he deserves. But now I think he will have already come back down to earth and will now know how big next season is, because his job next season it's even bigger than it was this time last year.
Yeah. I mean, and as well, Tom, in the kind of the football, media world, the wider football world, you're talking about the big picture. Kyril, Louis-Dreyfus and Kristjaan Speakman arrived at the club 4.5 years ago. And it's funny how much you hear new owners coming into clubs and talk about 5-year projects. And, they've completely transformed the club from a side struggling to make the playoffs in League One with a squad with no real assets in terms of big money value. And now we're in the Premier League with a squad full of potential. And it's even more impressive, the fact that they haven't actually, they've not really thrown money at it while they've been doing it.
Now, Kyril Louis-Dreyfus's plan has come together perfectly. And I've met Kyril Louis-Dreyfus a couple of times, but only, very polite, small talk, like if I've done the Foundation of Light gala dinner, if I've done the end of season awards for Sunderland, say hello, very polite, but you don't actually, I've never had a proper conversation with him. And that's the same. In fairness, Kristjaan Speakman is getting a lot of praise, and rightly so, having in the past had a lot of stick, probably unfairly, but he's certainly proved a lot of people wrong with how he's done. Same thing with him. Although I've met him a few times, I can't say that I know him. Whereas there's someone who you haven't mentioned, and a lot of people don't mention him, someone who I've got to know a little bit better, is Stuart Harvey. And that guy, believe me, we probably shouldn't talk about him too much because we don't want to lose him. He must be the hardest working man in football. He is so dedicated. And remember, he finds these players. He is brilliant at it. He doesn't set the budget, right? That's up to others to say whether that's up to Kyril Louis-Dreyfus, and I suppose to a certain extent, Kristjaan Speakman to say, right, I know that player's perfect, but I'm sorry, we're not going to spend that on him. Fair enough. But Stuart Harvey, he's the one we don't want to lose. And you've got him, Kristjaan Speakman. Kyril Louis-Dreyfus does get involved in recruitment, and you've also got David Jones on the board as well, who's got an involvement in recruitment. But the real grafter, the kind of, I suppose you describe as a proper grafter in midfield, the N'Golo Kante of the recruitment department, I can assure you is Stuart Harvey. And I think the good thing is they all seem to work together. And when it works, it works.
Well, Gav will tell you actually that I've said for a couple of years now, Tom, that when we're talking about the club's assets, like in the last couple of years, if you were running the likes of an Everton, a West Ham, maybe a Palace, maybe not a Palace, they've recruited half decent, but, a club who've struggled with recruitment, even to a certain extent, Manchester United, whose recruitment over the last 5-10 years is questionable, you'd be looking around at teams, recruitment teams, and you would think that the likes of Speakman and Harvey as a team would be at the top of most lists.
It will be now. Remember that it hasn't always worked out. The fact that it worked last summer and again to a certain extent in January And it certainly worked getting us out of League One, but those Premier League clubs aren't going to pluck League One up to the Premier League. If we get our recruitment right this summer, which is, I think, the only thing left that we need, because I mean, in terms of staying up, you need quite a few things. You need a tactically astute manager, which we've got. You need the team spirit, which so far we've got. And if they only want to sign 4 or 5 first team players, really that spirit should stay together. So hopefully that's 2 ticked off. The third one is your recruitment has to be right. And that's arguably the most important one because it affects everything else. If our recruitment is right this summer and in January, then yes, great news for us because we'll stay up. The bad news is that's when clubs who, certainly not bigger clubs, there's not many bigger clubs in Sunderland, certainly in England, but some of those clubs that do have higher aspirations than us at the moment, they might then start looking at our recruitment team and trying to kind of pluck them. But let's hope that doesn't happen. Maybe we should stop praising them so much, actually. Maybe we should go back to saying, no, our recruitment's been rubbish. Look at all that money wasted. If you look back at our last long stint in the Premier League, look at the money we spent on players. By the way, if you sign a player for 20 million and 3 years later sell him for 30, that is brilliant business. 3 good years and a profit. Even if you sign a player on a free, they give you 2 good years and they leave on a free. That's all right. That's all right. It's not bad. We were spending, 9 million on Craig Gordon, brilliant goalkeeper, but he left for free. Stephen Fletcher was about 12 million, left for free. And then, Didier Ndong, 13.6, sacked. Gilabocci, 8 million, sacked. Darren Gibson and Brian Oviedo, 7.5 million combined. Gibson was sacked. I think he was sacked. And Oviedo, I believe we paid him to leave. So if you look at that sort of recruitment and the amount of money lost, that's one thing that I'm confident isn't going to happen. All right, I don't think we're going to, we might spend big money, but I think we're going to spend big money on players who will ultimately be worth more, maybe even worth more now. And it's something that I had a great conversation with Sam Allardyce, who I love, by the way. He would have been well higher up on my list of Sunderland managers than you all had him, by the way. Absolutely. I love that man. I love him as a person and I love him even more as a manager. And we were talking about Jan Envila, and it still breaks our heart that he didn't sign. He could have come in the summer for about 6 million when Allardyce went and Moyes had come in. Or we could have waited till January and got him for free. And that's what we decided to do, but we were doing so badly. He got out of the contract and we didn't get him at all. If you spend the 6 million, the minute he signs on the dotted line, he's worth 20. So why wait 6 months when you run the risk of being cut adrift at the bottom, which is exactly what happened, and you don't get him at all? You get a £6 million player for 20 million. Why didn't we do it? And it's something that really, really annoys me. That's the kind of thing that I think is hopefully in the past.
Yeah, you'll have a lot of people daydreaming about not signing him.
Now, can I just jump in on the whole the thing about the recruitment team as well, Chris, quickly? I would say this too, though. Whilst I'm sure they'll be coveted by other clubs, the grass isn't always greener. They've got a good thing at Sunderland. They've got a lot of control. They have a big say in the way things are done. They've basically built this thing from the ground up, which you don't get the opportunity to do in the Premier League. And the example I'd point to would be Dan Ashworth. Went to Brighton, had 3 good years at Brighton, where he really developed his reputation. Then moved on to Newcastle, which was a disaster. Lasted 4 months there, and then went on to Man United, where he left pretty sharply too.
Yeah, he had longer. He had longer at Newcastle. But Manchester United didn't last very long. I think the thing was at Newcastle, Eddie Howe was quite enjoying having all the power in transfers, and Amanda Staveley really backed Eddie Howe. And I think maybe Ashworth didn't have the power he wanted. But he lasted a little bit longer than that. But Manchester United, that was incredible how hard they tried to get him, and he went. So your point is absolutely more than valid.
Yeah, and just on your point as well, Gav, that I think in terms of them having a good thing is that, and Tom touched on it, Gav, that, people expect almost, when you're on the rise for the progression to be linear. But obviously when they hit that bump in the road, it was almost like Kyril Louis-Dreyfus was almost saying, well, yeah, we are going to have bumps in the road. It's just about what we do afterwards rather than having any knee-jerk reactions.
Yeah. Just back to Ashworth as well. I misread it. Yeah, you had 2 years at Newcastle. But my point sort of was that, you know, these better offers, supposed better offers can come up, and you can go there and it's not what it said it was on the tin, and you don't have the same level of control. And yeah, you might have bigger budgets to play with at bigger football clubs, but it's about the job satisfaction. And you can't tell me that Kyril Louis-Dreyfus, Kristjaan Speakman and Stuart Harvey don't have that. Because, I mean, it must be immensely satisfying to be able to proudly say what they've done at Sunderland. But you're right, no, progress isn't always linear. I think, you know, we're going to have a tough year regardless now. And we've talked about this quite a lot privately, Chris. I think the fan base have a big part to play in that. We have to remind ourselves constantly that this is not going to be easy. If we get to October and we're in the bottom three, it doesn't mean we have to sack the manager. It doesn't mean we have to hound Kristjaan Speakman for the business done in August. It doesn't mean we have to get on the case of the players. We have to try and grit our teeth a bit and steer the course. And it's going to be very tough. But I think if you look at the back end of last season and the way that we got promoted and how important the fans were to that whole thing happening, you know, the semi-finals, the final, everything, the fans were such a massive part of that. I think collectively as a football club, the fans, the players, the owner, the sporting director, everybody, we've got to be on the same page from day one now. Like from the first minute of pre-season, we all have to be fully aware of the task at hand. What's going to take from us, each of us. Fans have got a massive part to play to make sure that the football club stay in the Premier League and stick to that. And I hope that means with regards to the running of the club and the likes of Speakman and the likes of Kyril Louis-Dreyfus, I hope that means they give themselves the best possible chance of carrying out their jobs. It's a bit different to being in the EFL, isn't it? You know, the Premier League, and Tom mentioned it before about recruitment. The recruitment's got to be spot on, but we've got to back them. We've got to make sure that we give ourselves the best possible chance of staying up. Yeah. And that means spending the right money, but obviously in the right way. Providing they do that, I'm sure everybody will be able to see the bigger picture and stay on board. But it's going to be tough trying to navigate some of those tough games. And hopefully we just have a squad and we have a backroom team capable of stopping in the Premier League.
Well, just again on that recruitment side, Tom, do you think because you see a Sunderland game on Sky and it's almost like bingo, you know, Sunderland bingo, where they talk about how young the team is and the young players we've got and all that sort of stuff. And do you think there's a lot of eyes on Sunderland in terms of how we've done things over the last few years? And obviously the big examples are Brighton's, your Bournemouths, your Brentfords. But do you think there's a lot of eyes on how Sunderland have done things as people are going, oh, hang on, is this like a blueprint on how to do things?
Yes, definitely. One, because, you know, there are a lot of success stories in terms of the recruitment, but then you add in the fact that we've also brought people through our own academy. And that is impressing people even more so than our recruitment. And on the recruitment, I think everyone appreciates, and certainly we do, that we changed tact a bit. At first, you weren't allowed to sign players under the age of 25. And we've seen that has changed. There were always caveats, like if there were a free transfer, there were caveats. But we have actually adapted to it and last season got it right. So yes, I think people are starting to look at us the way we do things. But that is, like I say, that's not just recruitment. Recruitment of manager will now be in it as well after what Régis Le Bris did. But yeah, I think the fact that we actually use our academy, the fact that we don't say to a player, right, if you sign to an academy product, if you sign this contract, oh yeah, you'll get game time, you know. No, we actually give the game time. Look how many minutes Chris Rigg played. Look how many Dan Neil played when he first broke into the team. Callum Doyle was only on loan. We played him until he was burnt out. Joe Bellingham played almost every minute that he was fit. Well, he was always fit, wasn't he? But he got suspended earlier on in last season. But we actually make these promises and we don't break them. And that is something that really does attract these top players to us. And more importantly, trying to sign players as a youngster, they want to come in our academy because they know they'll get a chance, which they won't necessarily get at another club.
Tom, just in terms of how it all ended in the playoffs and, thinking about that big picture, because obviously, in the past, we think about supporting Sunderland and those sort of things just don't happen to Sunderland. And we're normally on the receiving end of things like that. But do you actually think that in terms of changing the way we do things and the way we think at the club, that actually the 2 playoff victories within a few years, and even going back to maybe the EFL trophy, do you think all of that kind of signals a shift in the mindset of the club generally?
Yeah, I think maybe, potentially we're sort of, we've got a never say die attitude. But then again, if you look back to all those Premier League great escapes that we had under, there was Di Canio, there was Poyet, there was Advocat, there was Allardyce, that was also a kind of till the end attitude, wasn't it? I mean, sadly, the start and beginning, the start and middle, we didn't do anything. We waited literally until the end to survive. So that attitude has been there in the past. Whether or not the whole club has shifted to this kind of more of a winning mentality, that might be the case. Because if you look, that kind of till the end winning mentality has come in since Kyril Louis-Dreyfus came in, when you go back to League One, because it died towards the end of the Ellis Short era. It didn't quite work out for Stuart Donald and Charlie Methven. I mean, we won the League One playoff final against Charlton in their first season, it could have been completely different, but that didn't happen. So I do think that, yes, you've got something in there. I know that someone, I can't remember who it was now, one of your guests was saying that like Lee Johnson changed all this attitude by winning the. That
was Andrew. He had him fourth out the top 10.
Yes, he did, because saying that because we won the Papa John's Trophy, that changed our mentality. And I do get his point. And if that winning mentality was stemmed from them, or the takeover by Kyril Louis-Dreyfus, or whatever it was, if it was Patrick Roberts' goal against Sheffield Wednesday, the season we actually did go up, I don't know what it is, but it does seem to have continued, and I'm very happy about that. But whether that's actually been planned to perfection to instill that into us, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Gav, do you kind of sense that in a way? Because you talk about all those years of not winning at Wembley and things like that. And now we can go into the AFL trophy, but just generally just succeeding and winning those big games and winning and getting those big moments on our side. Do you feel like, just the feeling around the club changes because we're on the right side of those things?
Yeah, it's that's going to be another big adjustment, isn't it? Because basically since we dropped into League One, we've become as a club accustomed to winning lots of games of football. So that naturally, turning up at the Stadium of Light, turning up away from home to watch the lads, most of the time we were winning. So you get that, that adjustment's going to be difficult, I think, for a lot of people, that you're then going up to the Premier League where you're not expected to win every game. And I think, but what I do think is that the way and I mentioned this before, the way we play lends itself to being under the cosh and being on the back foot a little bit. And I almost feel as though the way we play football is the way that promoted teams should go into the Premier League. Being very organised, being able to defend under pressure, but then breaking with pace and breaking against teams and scoring goals that way. It's basically what Forest did last season, and it got them into Europe. And you could argue they could have done a lot better as well. You could have even finished in the Champions League places. And I just think that kind of stems from, certainly from before Le Bris's time, because we got used to winning games under various managers. But I think actually under Le Bris, we've almost formulated a plan for promotion whilst being in the Championship. Actually, before then, when you think back to the recruitment and things like that, when we were in League One, the last season we had in League One, when we brought in the likes of Dennis Cirk and the likes of Patrick Roberts, Dan Neil becoming an important player. Trey Hume was signed when we were in League One. Anthony Patterson was given his chance in League One. All of these things, these were building blocks to get us ready for the Premier League. And I just think now that we're there, it's not, the temptation must be there for a lot of clubs after promotion to just go, right, we need a new keeper, we need a new left back, we need a new centre half, we need two centre mids, we need 2 strikers. But all of the reasons that you got to the Premier League could then be negatively affected. You could be looking at disrupting the harmony of the squad, the togetherness which got us over the line in the semis and the final, the leadership from the likes of Luke O'Nien, who have become massively important to the football club. People are now looking at him and going, he'll not be able to step up to the Premier League, just as they did with the Championship. You know,
proves everyone wrong all the time. He proves everyone wrong. Ever since he signed, he's proved everyone wrong, and you wouldn't bet against him doing it again.
Yeah, and all of these things, I just think you've got to be very, very careful not to try and change too much. I actually think, a lot of the reasons we're in the Premier League are reasons why we might stay there. And yes, we've got to make tweaks. Yes, we've got to bring quality into the football club, but just be careful as well, And what's the worst thing that can happen this season? Really, we go down. All right, we go down, but we go down. Our pockets are a bit heavier. We've got more money in the bank. We're better set for the years to come. It's not. I don't want Sunderland to get relegated immediately, but you've got to just try not to change too much about the football club. I don't know what you think, Tom, but it's a very bold strategy. It worked for Forest. Forest got promoted, and Forest just went, we're just signing 20-odd players, and they stopped up by the skin of their teeth, and then now look at them. But I just think it's a risk. I would like to see Sun be a bit more pragmatic.
Yes, I agree with you. And the word is that they only want 4 or 5 players. I think it'll be more, by the way. I think they mean 4 or 5 players to go into the first team. I think that there will be more players signed. But yes, I agree with you. I wouldn't want to go down the route of what Nottingham Forest did, even though it has worked. But Villa have tried it in the past. Fulham have tried it in the past with varying degrees of success. I think part of this is that our club now, the standards all around the club, the standards are so high, right? And I don't just mean the training ground's beautiful, all right? The standard of coaching we understand is brilliant. Those standards are kind of obvious ones to talk about. If you go around the club on a match day, if you ever in any of the sort of suites or any of the sort of hospitality, the staff are like world class, they nothing's too much for them. Right, they are brilliant. Okay, so that standard is right up there, regardless of what's going on the pitch, which at the moment is good, touch wood. And then you look at, for instance, David Bruce, the job he's doing. Right, how much has he driven standards in his department? Okay, I actually had to say when I was with him the night before the final, and I actually said, David, sorry, I don't actually know what your title is, because his title is something that someone like me who doesn't really understand business wouldn't know his title, but I know what he's in charge of. And look at what he's done. The kits, we all love the kits, the fact that we've got Hummel back and everything like that. But he didn't just have the kits and the training kits. He had all the retro gears come out, all sorts of stuff just for the playoffs and such like. The standards there, which are off the pitch, right up there, as high as they can possibly be. And as a club, our standards are so high, and that obviously filters down to the pitch. It has to.
Yeah, it's attention to detail, isn't it? So you talk about the kit. It's not just about kits. It was the fact that he recognised Hummel is a brand that is associated with Sunderland. Why have we not had Hummel back since they produced those brilliant kits in the 80s and 90s? So he went out and he made that deal. And then you look at the kit and, the detail and things like the coordinates of the stadium, a light on the neck and, the ship logo running through the red stripes on the home kit. And the fact that we had chevrons all the way down the sleeve, which is something Hummel don't typically do. And then an away kit, which was a remake of a really popular away kit that fans still wear at games, retro replicas and things. All these I'm only talking about kits. There's a million things you could say. You go down to the PA system, which people complained about for years and years in the stadium. We'll get something state-of-the-art in place, state-of-the-art lighting rigs, a best-in-class pitch, because we'd had years in League One where the pitch wasn't great, and if you remember, that was partway through the season, we had to fix it just to get it up to standard to get games on. And that was like, right, we can't do that again. And Sunderland now have one of the best pitches in the country. The training ground, the level of investment in the training ground, and making it a place where players want to be. They want to socialise. They want to hang out there. They don't want to just walk in a minute before training and leave a minute after and go home. They'll hang about. They'll do extras. They'll sit in the cafeteria area and mix with other age groups in the ladies' team and the families from the academy. And I think what's happened with Sunderland in recent years is we've got back to what we are as a culturally, what Sunderland people are. I think that's what I think. I think the club are making decisions with fans in mind, that's not been the case. That's not been the case for a long time. I think sometimes that, it might sound really, really daft to anybody listening who isn't a Sunderland fan to be banging on about kits and kit makers and things like that. But these things matter to Sunderland fans. They want to be able to put a Sunderland shirt on and feel proud of it and go, "Doesn't that look good?" And be out and about and have fans of other clubs look at them and say, "God, I wish our kits were as good as that," or I wish we had I wish we had a say in the way our kits were made, or I wish we had a pitch as good as yours, or I wish we had the youngest squad in the AFL. I wish we had 5 academy lads on the pitch at the same time in a game as we did I think it was the Swansea game towards the end of the season. These little things do matter and they add up, and it's all about your identity as a football club.
It matters. It raises standards, and also let's not forget it does make money as well.
Correct.
And that is important to the owner of any business. That is important. We shouldn't just ignore that this is a win-win for everybody. But for me, it's the fact that as a club, our standards are so high at the moment, and I can't see them coming down anytime soon. Yeah. Touch wood.
I'm glad you said that, Tom, because I was about to say there's only one reason they're making decisions for fans. It's because they're going to spend money.
Do you know, I've avoided the Netflix series for years. I didn't really watch the second series, more. I think I watched it once, and I know I've got mates who've not even bothered watching it. And I'm wondering to myself, I've been thinking this, I might watch it now, just to reflect and just see how much of a difference has been made in that time.
There's one part of that. I mean, I've pretty much know it off by heart. I love it, even though we know the outcome is bad for most of it. There's Michelle Barraclough, what a lovely lady she is, and that moment when we lost to Charlton, and I'll explain why this moment really kind of hit with me, is that she is trying to hold back the tears at the end of the game, watching Charlton celebrate promotion, and she says, "Why is that never us?" Right? And I remember at that moment thinking, we all know how that feels. And a lot of other fans of other football clubs, they will watch Sunderland Till I Die. They will have been laughing at us, and they will have done. They will have found it amusing that we were getting very upset about what was going on at our club, understandably. But I think that moment will have made any real football fan go, "Oh, actually, I've been a bit harsh laughing here," because we can all relate to that. Any real football fan can relate to when Michelle said, "Why is it never us up there?" And I think that might have even made a few viewers who were watching it to mock us, I think that might have silenced them a little bit, and they might have thought, "Oh, I might be being a bit harsh here because I understand that. I can relate to that." So I know that this has gone on to a completely different topic, but that moment there in the whole series is the moment that really stands out for me. And it's so nice that lately, Papa John's Trophy, League One playoff final, Championship playoff, the semi-finals were dramatic. The final was even more dramatic. It's been us. It's actually been us. And if you go back to that moment when you rewatch it, Gav, there won't be a lump in your throat. There'll be a smile on your face, which is nice.
Yeah, even the last minute goal at Hillsborough, Patrick Roberts.
Of course,
even things like that going in our favour. But just going on to business in the summer, and obviously the big one, it happened immediately, straight away. We took in over 30 million for Joe Bellingham, and saw some criticism, which is absolutely ridiculous. I think any sensible Sunderland fan would wish him the best of luck. But some of the criticism was aimed at the speed at which it was done. But surely Tom, that was the best thing for the club, that got sorted out really quickly.
Yes, I think the best thing for the fact it was done so quickly was purely because of the Club World Cup. But there's no negative for Sunderland for it being. It wasn't like it was completed before the end of the season and he couldn't play in the playoffs. It wasn't like that. The thing with this deal was he had that release clause. And I know a lot of people were saying, well, we've got to hold out for the release clause. I remember at the time thinking, hold on a minute, because if we accept a little bit less, we can then negotiate a sell-on. And if Joe Bellingham reaches the heights that we as Sunderland fans expect him to, when he moves on from Dortmund, that sell-on will be worth more than the difference between what Dortmund have initially paid, and the sell-on clause. And I think that is, in the end, that sense of it, that is good business. In terms of the timing of it, it's not going to be a unique situation in the future because this Club World Cup is here to stay. It was only done so quickly because of that. It would have probably been announced just before the 1st of July otherwise. So I don't have any problem with it. And I think that I certainly don't have anything negative, only positive things to say about Joe Bellingham. And I think the deal will work out brilliantly for Dortmund, but I think it's probably worked out as well as it could have done for us.
Yeah. And the other thing about that, Tom, is obviously the reputation of the club, because surely, they've had conversations with Joe Bellingham and to bring young players in, you don't want to then be seen getting in the way of players moving on to bigger things.
Well, it seems like one of our kind of negotiating tactics when we sign a player is, right, we're signing you. 1, you're going to play, and 2, we're going to be fair. When a club comes in for you, like with Jack Clark to me was worth much more than we sold him for.
Yeah.
And he still had 2 years left in his contract, so we could have dug our heels in. But it seems like we'd said, because people talk about gentlemen's agreements, and in football they tend to mean nothing. It does seem like we stick to ours. And it looks like players that come in trust us as a club to be fair. So Jack Clark went for less than I think he was worth it, less than I think he was worth. But in the end, that was the bid. And the club said, okay, you can go in the summer, what have you. And he went. And I think with Bellingham, it was, you're going to play pretty much every minute that you're available. And whatever the time frame is, we will then let you go if you want to. And I think that's that's something that really helps us when it comes to signing players, is that we stick to the deal.
Yeah, yeah. And as well, in terms of ambition, because people were saying, try and keep hold of him, but I think that was unrealistic. But in terms of that ambition, because it's been questioned at times, you look back and within, with 4 or 5 months of the season left, they already signed up to break the club transfer record if we did end up going up when we signed Enzo Lefebvre. I mean, how big a statement was that in January?
Yes, when he came, I was like, it didn't make any sense to me from his point of view. Great for us. And because he is, from what we've seen of him, I think he is a Premier League player. Let's see what we say after 10 games next season, of course. But the fact that we broke our club record pretty much the moment the full-time whistle went at Wembley. I mean, that's brilliant and everything. But the fact that we actually were willing in January to sign a player with that obligation if we get promoted, it does show ambition. It does, because remember, in the past, we've pulled out of signings that we have promised. We've had this with Ricky Alvarez. We said, if we stay up, we've got to pay X amount of money. And that money was going to be our whole transfer budget gone. And we pulled out of it. And it cost us more than it would have cost us. And we would have had the player in the end. So, and that was only if we stayed up. That doesn't show great ambition. But in January, the Enzo Lefebvre signing and the fact that we've gone through it, that is a good sign when it comes to the ambition we show. And the club have been quite open with, some of my contacts, that they don't expect that to be our record signing come the 1st of September when the transfer window closes.
Wow. I mean, that's a statement to hear, Gav, because actually Enzo Lefebvre was the first time actually that this ownership has went out and said, right, we're going to really kind of spend big and put a load of money on this one. Up to then, it's looked like the bargain where they've picked a bargain out, but it hasn't been huge outlays. But this one was a real statement of intent.
Yeah, and I don't think we've talked about it enough, really, just the sheer audacity and the bravery and the willingness to put our necks on the line a little bit and say, actually, no, we're going to bring a player in who we've really got no right to have in the Championship. I mean, we only signed him because of who our manager is, let's be honest. And that's not a bad thing. I think that's great that we've got a manager who can attract players of that quality to the Championship. And the situation worked out perfectly. He wasn't getting a game at Roma. He probably just needed someone to show him a bit of love, rediscover the feeling he has internally about why he loves football, get back out on the pitch and playing positive football. It's not great when you sat on the bench all the time. So the situation was perfect for him. It was perfect for us. But it was still a massive, massive show of ambition. And I thought it was a big sign to the fans that we were serious about promotion. Because when he signed, we were still in with a shout of doing it automatically, weren't we? When we were sort of heading towards them games against Burnley and Leeds and so on. So at the time, we were making a signing there with the thought in mind to get promoted automatically, I would have thought. And we could step in there, Chris.
No, carry on. Sorry, go.
Sorry. What time's that? 22. Your big sigh there, you put us off.
Just quickly, Tom, have you got all half past?
Yes.
Okay, we'll zoom through this last bit.
Cool. I can cut all this, by the way. So yeah, Lefebvre, I think represents just the ambition that we had to get promoted. Yes, things hit the rocks. We didn't maybe stay in that automatic hunt as long as we'd have liked to have, but still, I think it told everybody at the club that we were very, very serious. And look, but you saw the way he was managed towards the end of the season. He was, we kept him wrapped in cotton wool because we knew he could come up with the moments of quality which would get us promoted, and he did. He played a part in both legs of the semis. He played a big part in the final once he dropped that little bit deeper and got involved on the ball more. And there's no doubt for me, Enzo Lefebvre is a Premier League footballer. I think he's really going to shock a lot of teams next season. People are going to be like, bloody hell, Sunderland got him. And that's the sort of signing I want to see. I mean, Tom mentioned there about potentially breaking our record a few more times. I think that's got to be the case. Even, you look at some of the spending from the teams who got relegated last season, and they spent more than what we spent on Lefebvre on worse players. I think it's just the way of the world now. There
you go, Tom. Gav's already misquoting you, saying we're going to break it a few times rather than just... But just quickly on, because you've given us one teaser, Tom, but just with your contacts, I mean, should we be concerned about getting a few bids for some of the players? Because even though we've gone up, we've still got a lot of talent there, and Eliza Mayenda's reputation in Spain now is kind of going through the roof.
No, I think we're okay. I think anyone who goes will be club's decision rather than, mutual decision, I should say. I don't expect Chris Rigg to go yet. I don't think that he'll be here for 10 years, I must admit, but I expect him to play in the Premier League for us and not be here for too many seasons more, to put it politely like that. I don't think Mayenda has done it for long enough for anyone to take a punt on him yet as well, which is good news for us because I think he might really suit the Premier League, actually. Other people, but I think if we hadn't gone up, I think we would have lost Dan Ballard and Dan Neil and Dennis Serkin. Because we've gone up, I'm quite confident. By the way, I've got no idea how close Serkin and Neil are to signing new contracts. I've got no idea. But I would expect them to now sign a new contract, and I would expect Dan Ballard to stay as well. Like I said, I think Mayenda will stay. I think Rigg as well. I think we're pretty safe on too. So if you think about that, I think Trey Hume's got a long contract. I wouldn't be surprised to see him sign a new one on more money because I think he deserves it. Not that I know exactly how much he gets, but I think he's underpaid. Anyone at the club listening to this would probably not like me. Probably saying to needlessly give someone a long contract more money. But I think we've lost Bellingham. Remember, we've lost Meckham, who was a key player as well. I'm not expecting anybody else to go. I think that Anthony Patterson will be our number one in the Premier League. That's not to say we won't sign a number two goalkeeper. So I think Simon Moore seems quite happy to be a backup. So in the Premier League, that might be third choice. We might sign a goalkeeper who fancies taking Patterson's place. But I expect Patterson to be number one in the Premier League. If he was to go anywhere, it would be to be a number two in the Premier League or a number one in the Championship. So I think we're safe with Patterson, Ballard, and I just hope that Serkin and Neil sign those new deals.
There you go. So 2 exclusives. We're going to break our transfer record 5 times in the summer and nobody's leaving. So you heard it here first. And just again, we've talked about the tough task of next season, Tom, but the 3 promoted clubs have come straight back down for the past 2 seasons. And if it happens for a 3rd time, it's possibly a sign of a major problem in the Football League. But how big a task is it for us to stay up this year?
It's a very, very tough task. I don't gamble just because I don't really. Not because I've got like an issue or anything like that. I don't have an issue with someone that does gamble. I don't gamble. But if I did gamble, I probably wouldn't be backing us to stay up at this stage. However, like I said earlier, there's 3 boxes to tick. A tactically astute manager, tick. A squad with a good team spirit at the moment, tick. And let's hope that doesn't change. The 3rd one would be this summer's recruitment. If we get that right, and we normally do the bulk of our business late. We won't know until 11 p.m. or midnight, whatever it is, 1st of September. If that's ticked, I'll be feeling a lot more confident. But it's going to be very, very tough. I expect the second half of the season to be better than the first half of the season because the players going up, the players who've come up with us will need time to adjust to the Premier League, and any new signings will need time to gel too. So I would imagine second half will be better. I agree with Gav. Let's have a bit of patience.
Tom, do you look at any of the other clubs in the Premier League now and the destabilisation that some of them are going through? I mentioned before, Leeds have lost a few. I think Matteo Joseph and Junior Firpo, they've gone to Betis. Burnley, obviously, there's uncertainty over their manager. There was uncertainty over Leeds' manager. Burnley have lost CJ Egan-Riley, who was a massive part of that defence last year. I think James Trafford's been linked with moves away to Newcastle, and potentially, I think it was one of the other top 4 clubs. You know, then you've got Wolves have lost their best player. They've lost their left back to Manchester City. Brentford have lost their manager. They look like they're going to lose Mbeumo. I mean, they've lost their goalkeeper as well. He went to Bayer Leverkusen. So does that, is that to be expected that sort of thing would just happen? Or does it, I'm kind of looking at that and thinking, I get more confidence about our chances when I see all this going on around us.
Well, I mean, Brentford are used to it. They should be fine. I mean, yeah, they lost their goalkeeper Flecken, but they replaced him with Kevin Kelleher, who's probably a little bit better, which is what they do and what Southampton used to do back until the wheels fell off years ago. Yeah, we can take it into account, but at this stage, Daniel Farke at Leeds, if you take that one for example, Farke's been promoted with Norwich twice, hasn't he? I think it's twice.
Yeah.
And his style of football didn't work in the Premier League. He will surely have learned from that. Surely he will have learned from that. And he'll learn basically how to see out games and defend better with Leeds now. So that's that one. But CJ Egan-Riley leaving Burnley, I mean, I must admit, that is a huge blow for them. I didn't see that coming. But yeah, I'm trying to think of other teams who might be in the mix. I mean, Wolves' manager, I mean, I can't believe how well he did. If he can keep that up, we won't have to worry about them because they'll be so much higher than us. I think when I'm thinking about who's going to be around us if we are going to be towards the bottom, there are a few who you might say, but they'd have to kind of implode. I mean, like Palace would have to lose Glasner, I would say. Brentford would have to get it wrong, whereas they've always got it right the last few years since they've been promoted from the Championship. Wolves would probably have to lose their manager. Leeds and Burnley would have to have a terrible start to the season and not adapt to it. West Ham maybe, but they've got so much quality there and the manager's got the feet under the table. I'm trying to find any club who might, definitely finish below us. And I've got to admit, I'm thinking out loud here. No one's coming to mind as a definite, which doesn't really help my positivity here. All right. But like I say, three things on the checklist. We've got 2 of them. If we've got the 3rd right, I might change my mind.
Oh, don't worry, because Gav's got about 14 sides who's going to finish below us with his positivity. But
exactly.
But I think that's a good place to leave it, just to kind of emphasise how tough it's going to be this season, and it'll be an interesting summer. And Tom, we will be very much looking forward to you announcing us breaking our transfer record fee umpteen times this summer. We're looking forward to that.
I think it might only be once, but who knows? Who knows?
Well, Gav's already on your case about multiple times. So, but we really appreciate your time, Tom. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Cheers. And Gav, we've got loads coming on How Are the podcast, and big week. We mentioned fixture list.
Yes. So by the time people hear this, they'll know who we've played, and there will be a pod out discussing the fixture list announcement. And we'll know when we're playing the mags and who we've got on Boxing Day and who we've got on the opening day and all that. So you'll be able to listen back to that. There was on This Week pod on Monday, there was an interview with Martin Woods, went out Sunday. I mean, we've got loads coming up too. Obviously, we've got more news pods coming up. We've got more top 10s coming up. Hopefully more interviews coming up. We've got a few in the pipeline. Different people coming on to chat with us. So yeah, we'll still be here every single day over the summer, we hope.
Yeah, and of course, as soon as the fixtures are out, you will map out how we're getting 60 points or whatever it is and qualify.
We're going to win the league.
Yeah,
don't worry about that.
Exactly. Well, thanks again, Gav. And thanks again, everyone, for listening. As Gav said, we've got everything covered on How Are the podcast. And keep a look out on the Roker Report website where we've got loads more on there. But from us, it's bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.